What do you make of Boris Johnson's stance on no deal? Because he's very keen that to get a deal, but he says that no deal must remain a possibility.
Well, look, I want to do all we can to avoid a no-deal situation. We've had evidence, the Treasury Select Committee, about how damaging that can be to our economy and everything else, and I'm working on proposals on the Irish border to try to avoid a no-deal being necessary, agreement not being approved by the House of Commons. But the point is, you can't force two parties to reach an agreement. And I think we'll see in the next few weeks as to how the EU reacts to Boris Johnson becoming Prime Minister, to his proposals, and to whether a deal is possible to be found.
You can't force a deal, but you could change the timeline.
You can change the timeline, but at the end of the day, I also think in this country, people need certainty, and businesses are crying out now for some resolution to this so that they can move forward. So I don't think we can keep pushing the date forward in a way that, you might do if it was a normal commercial negotiation.
We heard, though, from Adam Marshall at the BCC just this morning saying that, yes, that's the temptation, to go for no deal because it might give what in some people's minds would be certainty. But his fear is it doesn't give certainty at all because of all the uncertainties that it throws up.
Well, it doesn't necessarily. I mean, it doesn't give the certainty, and that you're right, there are more deals and negotiations that would have to happen. But I guess at least there would be, an acceptance that the UK has left the EU, and then actually the two sides will at some point, there are a number of issues like the rights of EU citizens, like the money that the UK owes, like sorting out the Irish border, that have to be resolved. But look, it's a highly undesirable outcome. I don't think that's what Boris Johnson wants. He wants there to be a deal. It's got to be a deal that's going to get past the House of Commons. The question's going to be, how do we find that majority?
Yeah, how do we find the majority? But also the question is, what is the team that he constructs around him? And part of the reason I linger on this subject of no deal is if that's Boris Johnson's view, you wonder whether those at the top table have to share his view. And I've read, like many others, that all the names being thrown about as to who might be there, and yours is one of them, Nicky. Are you expecting to take a cabinet position this time around? Have you had those conversations?
I haven't had conversations. I'm not expecting a call. There's many talented people in the Conservative Party, including those who have been very open about their support for Boris Johnson. I haven't declared amongst the final two. I was a great backer of Michael Gove, but he obviously didn't make it through to the final two. I suspect that, rightly, the Prime Minister will say to people who want to be in the Cabinet, you're going to have to sign up to my position, and some people will be able to do that and some people won't. Look, I love my role as Chair of the Treasury Select Committee, and I hope that I can carry it on.
But would you be able to sign up to Boris Johnson's view then?
Well, I think I'd have to have a conversation with the Prime Minister Johnson first, and of course we've got to get over today's announcement to see that that's going to happen.
Yeah, to find out who it is, indeed. OK. What about the way that the Cabinet is shaped around him? What are you going to be looking for today and into the coming days, Nicky, as to the shape that this Cabinet is going to take, and therefore clues as to where Boris Johnson's priorities lie, what he wants to do with the country?
Well, I do think the shape of the Cabinet is really important. I think it'll be the first sign. One of the key appointments is going to be the Chief Whip, the person that maintains discipline in the Conservative Party, gets the votes through, and then I think the who's in the top team is really important. I co-chair something called the One Nation Caucus of Conservative MPs. We're on the moderate end of the party, and I think making sure there are some members of the One Nation around the Cabinet table in the ministerial ranks.
Will there be room for that then?
Well, I hope so.
Given this talk of having to sign up to his view on Brexit around no deal.
I think there are. So Amber Rudd, for example, is my fellow co-chair of the One Nation Caucus. She's been very clear that she thinks she could sign up to what Boris would be asking, and I think she would be a great voice. Her, Matt Hancock, for example, to have around the Cabinet table, really, really important. Boris talks about unifying the party, and that's absolutely right. We've got to heal the divisions in the country too, so he's got to make sure he's got a spread of people around his table.
Do you think any challenges to Boris Johnson will come as soon as this week, or do you think we'll wait? Because we heard from Alan Duncan, Sir Alan Duncan, of course, yesterday resigning his ministerial position because he wanted to test whether the new Prime Minister would really have the confidence of the House. Can we expect more of these surprise developments to come?
I think there are going to be plenty of surprise developments, but I'm not sure they'll happen this week.
That's not a ridiculous question to ask about surprise.
Well, I was going to say, it's been so unpredictable so
surprises.
far, and it's going to be more unpredictable in September, October. But I don't believe there will be a no-confidence motion this week. I think the country would think, well, hang on a second, we've got a new Prime Minister, you've got to give them time and space. Obviously, the Speaker turned down Alan Duncan's bid yesterday, and I think that's right. I do think we've got to give the Prime Minister at least some time to set up the Cabinet, to set out the parameters for where he wants to go with policies, with Brexit, before anybody. And I hope that my colleagues will understand that and will stand back and allow that to happen.
On another subject, you are, of course, leading the Treasury committee on the Treasury. And I want to ask you about the Woodford Saga, of course, because this is something that I know you've been taking testimony from the FCA and others on this subject. Are we moving towards a world of more regulation around these types of funds?
Well, I'm not sure it's more regulation. I do think the funds need to be looked at. I think we need to be clear that people who are investing them know what the risks are, what the chances are that they might not have access to their funds when they want to withdraw them, the whole rules around the number of the percentage of listed securities. I do think this needs to be looked at, and I think the fund industry needs to understand that they're about to come under the spotlight, just as Neil Woodford has done.